All right, I apologize for that. Just wanted to make sure that the microphone was up and working, but we're good to go now. The Warriors, yes, recorded perhaps one of their best wins of the season, 114-102 victory over the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden on Tuesday. Obviously coming off Monday's victory against the Charlotte Hornets at Spectrum Center. The Warriors have now won 9 of 10 games with Jimmy Butler, 9 of 11 games overall. Obviously, that disappointing loss to the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday. But the fact they were able to get this win against a really good Knicks team, albeit without Karl-Anthony Towns, I get that. But the fact they were able to get this win kind of just makes up for that loss on Saturday to me. Like, they're now 3-1 on this road trip. I think we said if they can go 4-1 on this road trip, that's a great result. And they're facing the Nets in Brooklyn on Thursday. You'd expect them, based on how they're playing, to win that game. So if they can go 4-1, solidify themselves as a top 6 seed in the Western Conference. The Clippers are playing them at the moment against the Phoenix Suns, currently up 19-15 with 3 minutes to play in the first. The Rockets are now only 3 games ahead in 5th. So all of a sudden, the Warriors are just moving up, and we can start almost having conversations about potentially getting that 5th seed, which could be really important come the first round of the playoffs and potentially facing a team like the Memphis Grizzlies rather than a Denver Nuggets with Joker or the Lakers with LeBron and Luka. So a huge win in this game. Stephen Curry, my goodness, just loves to put on a show at MSG. We remember that 54-point outburst over 10 years ago now. He's now moved to 13-1 in his career, going back to one game he played at Davidson as well. But with Golden State, he's now 12-1 at MSG, which is just remarkable. And this is what this kind of arena, I've been to MSG, and it is an experience like no other. And the game I went to in 2020, it was the last game before COVID hit, was the Knicks versus the Pistons, and it was probably the worst 2 teams in the league. It was an awful game, but the experience and just the atmosphere at MSG was absolutely spectacular. I think it's the best arena or stadium or anything that I've ever been to watch a sporting event. And so clearly the superstars, they get up to play at MSG, and we can't forget Steph was questionable going into this game with the ankle injury after he kind of rolled it against the Hornets yesterday. He hit a 3 in the first quarter and then stepped on a spectator on the sidelines and kind of rolled it again. You thought, okay, maybe he's in some trouble. But that second half was brilliant from him, just controlling the game in all aspects. Again, not necessarily forcing his shot too much, but still got up 21, 9 threes, got to the rim a heap. Finished with 28 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. This is now 32 total assists over the last 3 games. So the way Stephen Curry is controlling the game, to me, has just been absolutely superb and been a key reason as to why the Warriors are doing what they're doing at the moment. But he had some helpful contributors as well. Jimmy Butler, I think, more aggressive today. I think the Warriors did a better job of kind of finding him, particularly on their split cut actions and going to the rim, was able to draw a number of fouls, able to finish the line. The 3-point shooting still isn't there, 0 of 3, but he took a couple more than usual in this game, 6 of 12 overall, 7 of 9 from the free throw line, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Pod's doing what he does, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 8 of 16. The only issue I think I have with Pods at the moment is, and tell me if I'm wrong, but how much do you guys feel that he just gets the ball at the end of a shot clock every single time? Whenever it's 4-3, 2-1 on the shot clock, the ball inevitably finds Pods. And I actually think it hurts his shooting efficiency. He goes 8 of 16 in this game. I reckon he had 2 or 3 where he's, forced to throw one up at the buzzer, basically, because he inevitably ends with the ball, which is probably not what you want from a Golden State standpoint, particularly come playoff time, but they won the game in the end, so who really cares? Buddy Hield had one of the strangest games I think I've seen in a while. I mean, it's typical Buddy Hield. So he goes 6 of 13, 3 of 10, so not great shooting percentages. And he had a few sequences which were god-awful. There was one late in the first half, and I don't know why. I tweeted out, I don't know why he closed the first half over Moses Moody, but he missed back-to-back threes. He missed an open 3, then got the offensive rebound, chucked up another corner 3, missed it, and then on the other end, fouled Jalen Brunson on a 3. And I was just like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? But in credit to him, he hit a couple of big threes in the second half. There was a couple, I think, late there in the third quarter or early fourth quarter where they were kind of huge ones, particularly as the Knicks, the Warriors came out after halftime, got a bit of momentum up, got a bit of a lead, and then the Knicks kind of fought back. This was really a delicately poised game, with 6.5 minutes left. It was like 94-93 Warriors, and then it was their defense that just took over. The Knicks failed to score for basically 4 minutes there. Warriors went on an 11-0 run, all of a sudden lead by 12 with 2.5 to go, and the game's practically over. So just a really, really impressive performance. Steph played brilliantly. Everyone else just kind of chipped in and did what they did. And, yeah, it was an impressive performance. To get to your guys' comments here, Daniel says we are a different team with Jimmy. Robbie says Jimmy stepped up and was more aggressive. Pods played very good, and Moody's getting better with his defense. Yeah, shout out to Moses, who stepped up and did a pretty good job as like the primary defender on Brunson, who he seems to actually handle him pretty well. And I think this is the kind of player Moses is probably best equipped to guard, because Brunson is a very shifty player, but he's not going to necessarily burst by you with explosiveness. He's not like a Ja Morant or a De'Aaron Fox or anything like that. I think those guys are probably too quick for Moses. I think his lateral quickness and speed probably isn't quite up to being like a primary perimeter defender on really small, fast guards. But Brunson is a bit more shifty. And I think Moses defensively, I think that works for him. And he had I remember, this time last year, he had a really good defensive performance against Brunson at MSG in a game the Warriors won. He did so again today. Now, Brunson was, still relatively efficient, 9 of 18, had 25 points, but he just didn't take over the game whatsoever. Like, the Warriors kind of always had him in control somewhat. And it was basically him and OG Anunoby, who went 11 of 19, 4 of 9, 29 points to lead the Knicks. It was them two or bust, really. Without Cat, they just didn't have much else. Josh Hart was 1 of 8. We know Mitchell Robinson isn't an offensive-minded player. Bridges was 7 of 15, 1 of 5 from 3. Didn't really feel like too much of a threat. Miles McBride goes 2 of 7. Campaign 2 of 6. Shamet hit, a 3. But that was basically like, aside from Anunoby and Brunson, there wasn't really too much going on for the Knicks offensively. And it was really the Warrior defense, which continues to really impress me. Like, I think a lot of us thought that, Wiggins going out, the Warriors defense might actually take a little bit of a slide here, but it's actually got better. It's actually got better across this, last 10, 11 games with Jimmy Butler. So it's just a fantastic result. Knox says, feel good win, not going to lie. Yeah, I wasn't too optimistic, particularly Steph questionable, the kind of injury concerns that they faced. No Gary Payton II in this game, which might have been helpful to guard Brunson a little bit. Who knows? He's got a nose fracture, as I think most of us probably knew was the case after that collision with LaMelo Ball yesterday. So hopefully he'll be back. There's status remains unknown for Thursday at the Nets, so hopefully he's back. But the Warriors just a really good victory, because wasn't that confident going into it, and down 8 at halftime, I wasn't overly confident either. Given that on the second night of a back-to-back, you think the legs might have given way a little bit there, but they continued with the intensity and the energy and got the win. Robert says, was really expecting them to lose, but we win. Sid says, thoughts on Pods and Moody defense on Brunson? Yeah, it was impressive. Geez, Pods is just a smart player. I'm still questioning whether this guy can ever be a star player, but maybe he's like Draymond. You know how Draymond is like, Draymond's an elite defensive player, and then he just kind of fits in with his skill set offensively. Yes, not much of a scorer, but Draymond's still been a 4-time All-Star in his career. I just wonder if Pods can be that kind of player. Now, he doesn't have the elite defense. He's clearly a different type of player. Like, he's a guard, Draymond's a forward. But I don't know. He's just so smart. Like, he just makes the right reads, and just such a high IQ player, which when you're playing alongside Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy is so, so important. Robert says, Buddy 1 of 8 before he shots. Good. Yeah, weird game. Because they actually needed the couple of threes and the few buckets he got in the second half. And he got to 15 in the end, which is not horrific. But, again, probably too much Buddy Hield offense. Played 23 minutes in this game. It was a weird one, because he did some really bad things too. But it's just the good and bad with Buddy Hield. It's part and parcel of it, really. AES says, Knox need minutes. Well, I wonder if I wonder if Steve wanted to get him involved early in the game just because he was coming up against the Knicks, obviously the team that drafted him, team that he was with basically for almost his entirety of his rookie contract, first 4 years. And he played some minutes in the first half, played some minutes in the second half as well, ended up playing 12. Obviously probably helped that GP2 was out. That's why he got some run. Didn't do a whole lot necessarily. Had a nice bucket in the first quarter, 2 points. 1 rebound, 1 assist. Had a couple of block shots using his athleticism and size at the rim there a couple of times. So, yeah, he was a -5. It wasn't a disaster. It wasn't great either, must be said. We'll wait and see what happens moving forward here. Obviously, he's on a 10-day contract. I think the Warriors roster is pretty much set because they made a couple of moves today with Pat Spencer getting a standard contract and then also with that open two-way spot from that, signing Braxton Key, who I don't know too much about. He's played 34 career games with the 76ers, the Pistons, and most recently last season with the Denver Nuggets. Seems like from, I hope you guys follow GSW CBA on X/Twitter. He's really good for this kind of stuff. Kind of compared Key to, a Larry Nance, Draymond, Karl-Anthony, like those big, smart forwards, mainly the defensive end. He leads the G League in steals this season. So like one of the best G League defenders. He's 28 years old already. So it's not like he's a young prospect necessarily. The 3-point shooting, like those other guys, is going to be the thing that really determines whether he can eventually make it in the NBA. He shot 20% from 3 in the G League this season, shot 20.7% last season. So I think he's 30.8% across his 34 games in the NBA. So it's an intriguing signing. 6'8" forward with really, really good defense, can handle the ball, play make a little bit. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure he's going to play too much. Obviously on a 2-way contract, good for Santa Cruz, I suppose. And then potentially maybe at the end of the season, like one of these 2-way guys actually you can basically sign a guy to the 15th roster spot on the final day of the season. And it kind of, because it's the final day of the regular season, doesn't really cost you too much from a payroll standpoint. So maybe he's one that could actually become playoff eligible. I don't think he's going to necessarily get any opportunity. Pat Spencer obviously comes in. He's now part of the main roster, and I'd expect Kevin Knox to get that 14th guaranteed spot after his 10-day. I'd expect him to stick around and be on a rest of season deal as well. Sorry, I just went off a bit off topic a little bit there, but I think the roster moves today are important to talk about. Sid says Gee was better this game though. Yeah, Gee was good. A couple of mistakes maybe early in the game. Blew a layup or two, but otherwise, 9 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists, a steal, block, 4 of 6. Made his only 3. It was a plus 14 in his nearly 15 minutes. So, look, it's one of those things where Gee, he's not a huge standout player because he does all the little stuff that really impacts winning. And I think Steve loves him. And it's one of those things where I think, well, when Kuminga comes back, I think his minutes probably disappear. But he still kind of does enough where you're like, well, if he does keep playing, then I don't really have an issue with it. Like, he's doing his role. He's impacting the game. So it's a weird situation there. Henry says, this is proof of concept win, but no Cat. We also don't have Kuminga, so we can still feel pretty good here. Yeah, I mean, like, Cat's probably, well, he's definitely more important to the Knicks than what Kuminga is to the Warriors, but I don't care. I don't really care. Like, you go into MSG, they've got basically everyone else available. They've got Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Josh Hart. They've got Miles McBride. They've basically got their top 6 in the rotation aside from Cat. Well, top 7 because Mitchell Robinson's there as well. And, this is a great victory. And, yeah, look, storyline could have been different if Cat played, but that's an if and a but and a maybe. And that's not the world we live in. We don't live in a world of ifs, buts, and maybes. Okay, the reality is the Warriors just got a very good 12-point win over a good Knicks team at MSG. Priscilla says Brunson got that Curry defense on him. VT Vino says, let's see if the Suns can steal a win on the Clippers to cap off a nice night. Then X says, we are getting the 5th Rockets. Just lost to the Pacers. We are 3 games behind them. Top defense in the 4th. Buddy sucked for 3 quarters, then did okay in the 4th. Yeah, 5th Fifth is a genuine possibility at this point. So we'll wait and see what happens here. There's 20 games to go now. The Warriors are 34 and 28. I think we kind of said, I don't know, like 6-7 games ago that if they can get to 47, 48 wins, well, all of a sudden, like they only need to go kind of 14 and 6. And when I say only 14 and 6, I mean, they've won 9 of their last 11. They should be on an 8-game winning streak right now. They should have beat the 76ers. And, everything's looking positive. JK hopefully back on the weekend. It's looking good. Robert says, not sure Knox is good or bad. He seems not to catch the ball well, or is it the lack of chemistry? I think it's very difficult to ask a player to come out and have an impact, with the limited minutes on a 10-day contract without that security and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty hard to judge. There's some simple basketball stuff like I'm not gonna I don't want to profess like I'm a good charge taker, but there's been a couple of times, and there was one in that early second quarter where Kevin Knox, OG Anunoby drove baseline, and Knox was there. Knox was there in plenty of time, and all he had to do was square up and take the charge. And instead, he went side on, and it was clearly a blocking foul. And I don't know if it's he doesn't want the body contact or what it is, because that was just a simple play to me. And again, I'm not wanting to compare myself to NBA players, but I know how to draw a charge, and I know there's teammates of mine that don't know how to. I watch teammates of mine, and they try and take a charge, but they're too scared to put their body on the line, so they turn their shoulder into it to try and protect themselves. But then, of course, that turns into a blocking foul. I played last night social league basketball on a Tuesday night here in Australia, and we got a win by 3, which was good. And there's a guy who I didn't think was very good, but he was just driving into the lane and making these absolute BS layups and floaters throughout the entirety of the first half. And I was getting pretty annoyed. And on the side, our center went off, and I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to play center because, we're all basically the same height. It's a bit weird. I was like, okay, I'm going to play center. And I said to the boys at halftime, I said, if I don't draw a charge on this guy in the third quarter, I'm not playing next week. And sure enough, first 2 minutes, I drew a charge because he just came barreling into the lane. I don't know. It's a long story just to go back to Kevin Knox and his inability, I suppose, to be able to draw a charge in that scenario on OG Anunoby. Anyway, FTW Clan says, if Jimmy was able to play in Philly, this could have been a potential 5-0 road trip and 9-game winning streak. They still should have won. I think, even without him. Kangham says Knox just looks tight, and hopefully he can adjust to his role, which is 3D and rebound. He's definitely got the tools. For it. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure if they're going to sign Pat Spencer to a standard contract, then I'm very confident they're just going to do the same for Kevin Knox, because I think that's just an obvious move to make. I think I'd probably rather Knox over Spencer. Clearly, they just don't really like the free agency market. And so they were just like, we're not going to get anyone better than Pat Spencer. So we're just going to, or at least we're not going to get anyone who we also can envisage coming in here and learning the system and getting some chemistry, in the last 20 games right before the playoffs. There's no available option that's, worthwhile to do, as opposed to Spencer, who's, been around basically in the G League and stuff for a number of years, and has been around the team this season and last season on a 2-way contract, and he just knows the Warriors, right? So it's kind of underwhelming. You would have liked maybe for someone, a bigger name or a more highly credentialed player potentially on the free agency market, but how much would those guys have really impacted? Probably not too much. So this is what the Warriors end up deciding to do. Robbie says if JK can come back and integrate well, we have a real shot to make a run. Red Sox says, how strong are we? Did that game show we're at least fringe contenders? I don't think teams want to play us. I don't think teams want to play Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond in a playoff series. As Robbie says, it's going to really come down to Kuminga here. Is he going to come back, fit in, and just add to what the Warriors already have? Or is he kind of too big of a piece to reintegrate and then things get a little bit clunky? I don't know. Robbie says, I think when JK comes back, GP2 should play when Buddy is cold from 3. Yeah, it's really going to come down to the spacing. Like, there's times where Buddy Hield's not hitting his threes, and you just think, yeah, like Guy Santos could play over him. Moses should probably play more. But Moody played 27 minutes in these games, so played more than Hield. Guy got his 15. Perhaps there's times where you could cut Hield down from 23 to 17, 18, and Guy plays 19, 20. Kuminga obviously coming back. It's going to be interesting. Warriors, got solid contributions all over the floor. Quentin Post I didn't think was great in this game, but was probably a bit overawed maybe by the situation of the game in the fourth quarter. But I thought he was still okay. All right, guys. Given we spoke plenty yesterday, I might finish it up there. Thank you very much to those of you for tuning in. The Warriors play on Thursday against the Nets. Now 3-1 on the road trip. Let's hope it's 4-1. They're 34-28 on the season. Suns, Clippers playing right now. The Clippers up 1, still 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. The Lakers are playing the Pelicans. That's not really relevant. Pacers beating the Rockets, as you guys have mentioned earlier, is very, very important. Minnesota got a win over Philadelphia, so that's not ideal, I suppose. And the Spurs beat the Nets. The Spurs hanging around, but not really a threat. And before I go, just a shout out to a couple of things. First of all, Kyrie, just devastating. Really, really disappointing to see him go down with that torn ACL. I spoke about it yesterday, but obviously since then it's been confirmed as a torn ACL. Just never want to see the best players go down with injury, and that's what's happened. And the Mavericks, I mean, it just goes from bad to worse for them. Like, it's just, people are starting to talk about this as perhaps the worst season in a franchise history in the NBA, and it's hard to argue when you trade your future. I mean that the Luka thing was brought on themselves, but from a fan's perspective, you lose your franchise superstar in Luka, and then your best remaining player is now out for basically a full year. Then you've got the guy you brought in for Luka gets injured within the first 3 quarters of his debut. Like, I feel for Mavs fans. I genuinely feel for Mavs fans. It's quite disappointing. So, shout out to Kyrie. Hopefully he comes back bigger and better than ever. Obviously some concerns there with his age and stuff like that, but fingers crossed for him. And the other thing, just off basketball as well, shout out to anyone that's from Queensland. Cyclone Alfred is coming in hot and or hot and wet, I suppose, and is going to hit, I think, here in the next 12 hours or so. So my brother moved up to the Gold Coast late last year, so kind of been in contact with him. Lives right on the river, which I don't think is a great thing. He's kind of been saying that they're predicting that there could be some significant flooding going on and stuff like that. So to anyone listening to this or watching this that's from Queensland, thoughts and prayers are with you as you prepare for what's going to happen here over the next few days. I mean, they don't usually cancel any AFL games unless it's for a very good reason. The last time they cancelled AFL games, I think it was for COVID. And now their first game of the season was supposed to be Brisbane Geelong on Thursday night, and that's no longer the case because they can't play at the Gabba. They can't play in Brisbane. Essendon Gold Coast was supposed to be happening on Saturday night. Now that's not happening either. So, shout out to those of you in Queensland. Hopefully you stay safe and don't have too much damage over the next few days. Just a couple other comments from you guys here before I finish up. Robbie says, we just need to beat the Nets. We can't lose an easy one. Gamer of 2P says Pod's been averaging 18 to 20 with Jimmy. I think it's because defenses load up so much on Steph and Jimmy that Pods often finds himself as the one wide open, and I think that's also part of his high IQ nature. He knows when to cut at the right time. He knows when to space out to 3. He just knows where to be, and therefore he seems to get a lot of these open shot attempts. It's really interesting. Berserk Monk says good win today. We got really lucky. Cat didn't play. Draymond was able to cheat off Achua and Robinson. It's a good point. I mean, the Knicks schematically are quite different, obviously, when they don't have that floor spacing 5 out there. Timothy says, we beat a top 3 seed in East after beating Rockets and Bucks. I can't believe it. Robbie says, if Pods hits his open 3s, he will score very well. Yeah, it's going to be the thing about Pods and his rise to stardom and whether or not he can potentially be an all-star in this league is going to come down to the scoring and the efficiency. And I mean, he took 16 shots today. He took 16 yesterday as well. If he's doing that and he's getting his 20 points a game with all the other stuff he does in terms of rebounding, playmaking, drawing charges, stuff like that, he can be potentially an all-star in this league. And, it's still only year 2 for him. Hopefully plenty of improvement left. Daniel says, do you think when JK comes back, the defense could even improve with Jimmy and Draymond doing all the smart rotations? JK can focus on using his athleticism and being a point of attack defender. Possibly. It depends on how they actually use JK, because to me, I think he's a much better on-ball defender, point of attack defender than off-ball. I feel like his smarts and his concentration can sometimes not be there when he's off the ball, and like when he's guarding guys who are cutting and moving and stuff. When he's on the ball and he's just, basically being told, you go guard that guy and shut him down, then I think that allows him to concentrate and lock in on one individual opponent. And he can actually use his size and athleticism and be a reasonable defender in that scenario. So it's going to be fascinating to see. Berserk Monk says, in the playoffs, good defenses will definitely leave Pods and Draymond open to load up on Jimmy and Steph. They need to knock those threes down enough to keep defenses honest. Yep, absolutely. That's going to be the case. And I don't know how I necessarily feel about that. If, going into a playoff game thinking Brandon Bajemski might take 16 to 20 shots, the Warriors might live or die by it. They've certainly got faith in Pods. I have faith in Pods, but there's also, the numbers don't lie. What is his 3-point percentage at now this season? Just checking. He's at 31.9%. So it's still not great. Still needs to improve. It's been better here lately, but that's certainly the biggest part of his game to me, because he's got to go away in the offseason again and think to himself, okay, I'm going to be taking 5-6 threes a game. Let me try and get to high 30% from 3. Gamer FTP says, imagine a lineup with Jimmy, Moody, JK, Dre, and TJD. Okay. Jimmy just the point guard in that scenario. TJD's out of the mix. Daniel says, I think switch TJD with Post. Yeah, you definitely would, because that gives you a little bit more spacing. I'd be worried about the spacing with Jimmy, JK, Dre, and TJD on the floor. Berserk says, I think the does miss like 6 to 10 wide open threes today, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely. Particularly Buddy Hield was wide open a couple of times, and you'd think he'd just can him, and he missed them. So, Anyway, we're going to finish it up there. Thank you to those of you for tuning in. Thanks to those of you that have commented. Appreciate you guys if you're watching on replay or listening via your podcast feed. I'll be back on Thursday after the game against the Nets for another post-game live. Once again, as I finish up here, shout out to those of you in Queensland with the incoming cyclone. Stay safe, and thanks again, everyone, for tuning in.